Are we doing?
Where'd you find that, Al?
What's that?
That's a good piece of music.
I wrote it. It's all mine. I wrote it, put it on iTunes. You can buy it for 99 cents. You can. Picture of Ari on the cover.
Baby Ari.
Yep.
Oh,
We're starting.
Oh, we're starting. Oh, hello. I'm Dr. Chris.
And I'm Alan Chatney.
And this is the Source Points podcast where we talk about all things geoscience, oil related, and in this case today, in career transitions.
Exactly, career transitions. And I am absolutely stoked. We have two guests with us who've graciously joined us here in our studio. Heath Brown, so we've got a seasoned broadcasting pro.
27 years in broadcasting.
Awesome. And he's kind of chuckling to himself, I think, a little bit at our setup here. And then on the other side, we've got Jonathan Banyard.
Hi.
And so, guys, why don't we just dive in with a little bit of an intro and kind of put some context to this. Heath, start us off.
Well, I was 27 years in broadcasting, as previously mentioned. It would have been 28 this March had I not been laid off last year at CTV. They eliminated sportscasters all across the country. Some got to stay, use their union seniority. Some chose to leave like myself and take the package and try something else. So I had to do something new after 27 years in broadcasting. And that's all I've ever done. I went to high school, went to SAIT, got my first job in 1990 in Red Deer. And car sales has been a real challenge. I'm at Stampede Toyota right now. I've learned tons from them. They're very gracious and supportive people, and I'm now the lease portfolio manager. So if you're looking to lease or buy a car,
here we go. We're all going to have a
Stampede
Toyota.
Toyota. I sincerely hope so.
And our podcast is not sponsored by
we're agnostic.
Stampede Toyota.
Yes.
No, it's not.
Stampede Toyota.
And I know Alan from Rocky Mountain Little League. He was the president for a long time. Our kids were on the same baseball team a number of years ago, and he's a great guy, and I'm happy to support this podcast.
Oh,
Right.
that's
Thank
great.
you. Thank you for being here.
So the reason that I sort of connected the dots, you say, okay, why do you have a sports broadcaster who's now at Stampede Toyota on a geoscience podcast? Well, we're going through huge transitions in geoscience. I think
Absolutely.
And then I thought of Jonathan, who we've had lots of great lunches. Maybe a glass of wine or two at lunch.
One or two.
And had some discussions exactly on the topic of career transition. So, Jonathan, introduce yourself.
Sure, yeah, I'm happy to be here. I find myself in a process of transition. So I spent the last 30 years in seismic and data library business. Spent 9 months over in the UK. All of my experience here has been in Calgary, but except for the last 9 months where I was heading up European marine acquisition. And my family stayed here, so I wanted to come back home, and it was tough to be away from them. The wisdom of coming back to this market unemployed, you could question that.
Hey, I did that as well.
Hey, they've elected socialists. Maybe it'll work this time.
Yeah, my God, I watched that from afar with horror. And but you know what? It's great to be back home. It's not perfect, but I firmly believe, having travelled extensively from everywhere from Stavanger to Cape Town, that Canada's best. It's the best country in the world. It's not perfect, but I'm very happy to be home. Very happy to be home. So learning lots with how you handle career transition and how you position yourself to move forward.
That's interesting. So any advice for Heath, who's in this space? Do you have any?
Yeah, I mean, you really have to think of yourself in a different way. Previously and historically, one has tended to, let's say, build a resume, which is really a shopping list of what you've done. And that's not, especially in career transition, that's not going to get you where you need to be. You've got to look forward. Your resume has got to be more of a look through the windshield as opposed to the rearview mirror. What skill sets do you have that are transferable, and what can you bring to the table moving forward? Your experience is crucial, but an employer is going to look as to how do I engage that experience and deal with what I've got to deal with moving forward.
Oh, it's kind of cool. One of the things I was also taken with is that in geoscience, there's a number of things driving the career transitions we're seeing amongst geoscientists.
Sure,
right? So
yeah, absolutely.
Changes in focus, the onset of the unconventional world, and engineering. These are all elements that are happening. Disruptive things that are happening in that space. Same thing, I think, in broadcasting.
Oh, my.
I mean, why would CTV let every sports broadcaster go? Why did they do that?
Because no one's watching television anymore.
Because of what we're doing right now, because people on YouTube have amazing followings. And not to say that we do yet, but
I don't know, 4,500 views of the last podcast.
That's cool.
yeah.
Yeah.
Was-
4,500?
Yeah, that's what my counter says anyway.
I like.
So the question is, I got a question for Heath about that. Was there talk in the industry about the disruptive influence that I guess YouTube or other podcasts had on your industry?
The internet has been a thorn in the flesh of conventional broadcasting for quite some time now, and the end is nigh, I believe, for traditional television stations. I predict many will not even renew their license; they'll just go out of business. It's just so hard to tell people when to watch TV now. We can't have that 5 to 7 news block and expect that people are going to be available at 5 to 7 when they've already either looked at the internet, they've listened to a podcast, they've gone to YouTube at 4 o'clock or at 3 o'clock, or they know that they can skip the supper hour news from 5 to 7 and get it at 8 o'clock as opposed to waiting till 11 or 11:30. In the case, CTV still airs a newscast at 11:30 at night.
Wow.
Can you believe that?
I think I've
CTV?
watched it on occasion.
Yeah, what's CTV, right?
Yeah.
So
That's way
God love
past
those
all-
people for staying up that late.
Yeah,
That
way past my
watch.
bedtime.
That still watch. There are a handful I know because I get recognized, and that's the show I did for the longest time during my tenure at CTV. So there are some people that still watch the news that are slaves to that tradition and that routine, and they're dying off. Though there's not many of them left.
And that's going to keep happening. Imagine the guys that used to work at Blockbuster Video,
Yeah.
or I don't know, Kodak, or they had their own film developing business or something. Why is it that we can't often get our careers ahead of those looming transitions, get the skill sets we're going to need to make the pivot? It's a challenge that's live and active in the geoscience space today.
Yeah, change requires you to really steel your resolve, and you have to be proactive. Change is difficult, right? Change is hard for people to do.
Yeah, interesting.
I was so set in my job. It was getting easier as I was doing it and getting more experience. 27 years, I could do it in my sleep practically. I didn't have a lot of responsibilities at CTV, and I kind of sensed something was coming, that the jig is going to be up here soon. And then when it happened, I was just like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? What's happening here? This can't be happening. They still need people to present. They still need people to deliver the news. They still need people to tell the stories. No, they don't.
Yeah,
They
and then-
don't.
And so then you look for complementary skill sets, right? Dr. Chris went through the same thing. You've gone through a geoscience transition from one kind of geoscience, I would argue, to another in terms of geophysics to geography, right, or geographic information systems. And you're using both of those skill sets now in your work.
Well, actually, this comes down to something that Jonathan and I were just talking about, and
What do you mean?
I
You were
can-
talking before the podcast?
yeah, I know. I had suggested. I was even when Jonathan came in, I'm like, no, save it for the podcast.
Yeah, we had a
man."
pre-pod.
And then it was like, but wait a second, let's just jibber jabber. Yeah, we're gonna keep on talking.
That's hilarious.
So Jonathan was talking about how you have to integrate all these different skills. Now the problem I see is that companies are not integrating those skills. For instance, at the last major corporation I worked for, I'm not going to mention their name, I tried to integrate some of my skills, and they pretty much said no.
Yeah. Obviously, you're allowed to do that here because we're doing a
Yes.
podcast. You set up. So that's kind of cool. One of the questions I have is, why, of all things, sports broadcasting? Because the one thing that I will watch at the appointed hour on television is a sports broadcast. Like, I will watch the hockey game when it starts. I don't really want to. If I can't watch it when it starts, it's a problem because I have to try to close off the outside world and tell everybody not to give up the score.
Yeah,
until I can-
live sports is still a big deal in this country. There's a couple of sports networks that are quite dedicated to showing every hockey and every football and every baseball game and even basketball game that they can. And most of that content is out of the East, unfortunately. And it came down to for local broadcasters, for Calgary, Edmonton, Vancouver, where they just said, we put you in a certain slot, and there's not enough people watching at that time to justify your salary, and you're done. And we'll get it done. We'll still get a news reporter to do the big sports story. The coach gets fired. The new coach gets hired. Someone can still do that. They don't have to be a sportscaster. They don't have to have as much tenure as I had or Glenn Campbell had. And even though Glenn Campbell stayed, he chose to, exercise his union rights and stayed. And so God love him for hanging in there and keeping a 6 weeks vacation and all that good stuff. I wish I was as lucky. I chose otherwise because I just didn't feel valued, right? And if my company's not going to value what I do, what my area of expertise is, then maybe I should just do something else. And I didn't love broadcasting enough to stay and talk about City Hall, talk about the NDP, talk about that dope.
Really? We
dope,
do that all
that
the
dope
time.
in Ottawa.
That's coffee table. That's
so
that's podcast talk.
Yeah.
Well, you're off the hook. You can leave halfway through this podcast.
Is that right? Well, no, because I can speak my mind.
Yeah.
I don't have to be Johnny unbiased and
Oh, right. Yeah.
right.
Yeah,
I have
yeah,
to
yeah.
be a news reporter, stand in front of City Hall and say the mayor is blah blah blah. No, I want to say the mayor's a twit. I want to say the prime minister's a twit. I want to say the premier's a twit, and I can't do that in news. So,
By the way, agree. So,
Yes.
and so that's kind of cool. You had a couple other things, Jonathan. Fire
I did actually, yeah. I mean, if you are considering, if you're thinking about career transition, or if you're having career transition thrust upon you, there are some really interesting resources out there, and a number of interesting things are going on. So there's a thing called the Gold Mind with a D, Gold Mind Project, and it is essentially it's a self-help sort of facility where you can go and meet with sort of like-minded and like-worked individuals to figure out what your path looks like going ahead. How do you properly position your resume? How do you properly develop a brand? And it's extraordinarily useful. Another interesting thing is the Global Talent Utility, and this has been funded by the Canada West Foundation.
Oh, cool.
And they are producing an application that is far more focused on competencies, not a litany of what you've done. So we all have certain competencies within what we do on our daily basis. That doesn't necessarily describe the job you do. And ultimately, it's got some provincial and federal funding, also funded by Canada West. And ultimately, it'll be a part and parcel of the Job Bank, Canada Job Bank, a better, more robust version. There will be employers that participate in that project.
Oh, that's cool.
I think that's really interesting, and it's a step away. One more thing. RBC produced a white paper called "Humans Wanted." You can Google on it, and I mean, there's lots of discussion about having career transition thrust upon you, with lots of discussion around how machine learning, artificial intelligence, robots, and so on and so forth are going to steal
100 miles an hour.
Steal so many jobs. There are still going to be jobs required surrounding that scenario. The white paper by RBC says that there will be another 2.4 million jobs created by 2020 around this. That's what they're saying. That seems an extraordinary, astonishing number to me, but nonetheless interesting.
Amazing.
You can
Servicing our robot masters.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So when you think of complementary skill sets, why did you move from broadcasting to selling cars?
It was the only job offer I had, Alan.
Okay.
And this is the God's truth. I had a week to decide to take the layoff.
Right.
Or I could use my union rights to bump someone out of a job, you know.
Right.
And I didn't have the heart to do that. So I asked the great good Lord for a miracle. I said, I want a firm job offer or a firm lead on a job in a week, and I'm going to take the layoff. I'm going to take the money and run and go do something else. And the only two people to actually respond and reply to my search, and I blanketed the city with resumes and letters and phone calls and emails, and the only two people that got back to me were Jerry Wood from Woodridge Ford and Alex Baum from Cochrane Toyota. And Alex told me to phone his son Corey at Stampede Toyota, and that's what I did. And
oh, that's great.
And then I met him Tuesday morning and signed the layoff paper on.
But you
Tuesday
were prepared.
afternoon.
You were the cool thing about that is you were prepared to pretty much take anything
Yep.
reasonable.
Anything reasonable.
Anything reasonable in any
time
field
for something
not
new.
broadcasting. And What do you think about that? I mean, would you? I mean, you're
It's courageous,
It
right?
is,
It
yeah.
is courageous, and I don't think that's too strong a word. You have the courage to leap.
after 27, after decades of doing
exactly.
something, and then knowing
Yeah.
that you're maybe not going to be any good at the next thing.
Yeah, well, sure. I had no idea. I didn't know if I would last a month or last, 36 months or maybe the rest of my career. I mean, when Corey Baum sat me in his office and I told him how much money I made after 27 years in broadcasting, he said, in the car industry, you would have made 4 times that amount after 27 years in your industry. And I just about fell out of my chair.
Wow.
And I said, when do I start?
Yeah, but I wouldn't have been on
play
TV
catch up.
every day.
I need to play catch up. I wasted a lot of time having fun at my job, and I never worked a day in broadcasting. I loved it so much.
Well, that's a big
it was
part
so
of
much
it,
fun.
right?
But
It's not just salary.
yeah,
right?
yeah, but still, we're at the age where it's salary, and so I need to make up for lost time here, and hopefully I can do that with Stampede Lexus.
Okay, cool.
You also have to consider that there's no such thing as a permanent position anymore.
Yeah.
It may seem like
Yeah.
a full-time position, but
Yeah, being at one company for 20, that is a rare bird.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of years, my formative years were spent at a giant oil field services company. And being there for 15 years, that was already starting to get weird in the industry, right? And I've been here at Exploit. It's kind of a different deal because we're an entrepreneurial, kind of privately held. 16 years? I mean, that's a long time already.
To be clear, I was at CTV for 17 and in the industry for 27. I worked in Red Deer,
okay.
Kelowna,
Still, long
Vancouver.
time.
Still,
Long
17
time.
years in one place is pretty good.
That's pretty amazing.
I think conventional wisdom is a career is about 5 years now, right?
Is that what they say?
Holy
so, yeah.
moly.
Yeah.
A career. Now we had that conversation before the podcast as well, and for me, when we're talking about all these job transitions, is that for me, I look at it as slightly different. Is that most people have jobs, very few people have careers, and when you have a job, you go in and it's, I don't want to say boring, but let's say you go do your skill, and then you go home, and that's most people. So when you say most people have a career, I would be more inclined to say most people have jobs.
Yeah, I would agree with that actually. Yeah, and it depends how you look at how you look at a job and the nature of the job in which you find yourself too, right?
And different situations for different people also,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
Family situations, different circumstances.
Yeah.
A few of us, like I'm one of these people, I'm incredibly fortunate because I love what I do. I have a lot of fun at it. It's hard to do. It's getting, arguably, the last few years, it's been getting a little bit harder, but a lot more fun because we're upending and disrupting and doing things differently. It's kind of like your words, Heath. You said, I didn't work a day in my life at broadcasting because I love doing it. I feel the same thing.
Good for you.
In the industry that we've got, there's the odd day that's a bit of a grind.
You don't have a stress-free job, though, Al. I'll tell you that.
No, it's not stress-free, but luckily I enjoy the stress. If that's possible.
It's got to be meaningful.
Yeah.
And stress can be meaningful.
Yeah, it can.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
good one, Chris.
It can be productive.
That's why you're a doctor.
By the way, Chris gets the email award in our shop for the most expletives in an email.
That was, I was, yeah.
mad.
I'm usually very composed, and I'll go through my mind, and I just let loose. I was
All of
like,
a sudden, I was like,
what the
now I
F
know
is going on with these F'ers? And
He doesn't know where the backspace button is, does he?
it's like, caution, don't send those externally, because I was like, now I know why he wears the death skull ring and has the piercings. And
Are those skulls on his tie?
yes,
Yes,
that
they
is the
are.
skull in my tie.
I see.
Yeah.
And the tie is a new thing.
But the tie is a new thing. He's punched it up this year. He's got ties every day
Yes.
now.
Oh.
Every day, every working day, ties.
I spent 15 years in a university environment where I wore shorts and a T-shirt to work.
That's another transition.
Outstanding.
Well, when I think back, that was more of just I'm going to do it because I can. And then now that's what I'm doing now. So I'm going to, not
You're
that
not
I'm
allowed to wear
supposed
shorts and a T-shirt.
No, I'm not allowed to wear shorts and a T-shirt. But I'm wearing the tie because I can, not because I have to.
A handful of years ago, before they made us stand up to read the sports news on CTV, we were sitting behind a desk and our bottom half was protected. And
So you wore shorts?
and I would wear jeans or shorts.
I've seen that on
yeah.
TV shows.
Just go no trousers.
Yeah. Well, no, you can't do that. That's an HR issue, Alan.
Can you do a commando sportscast?
No,
It was bad the last time I did it.
cannot.
Oh, that's all I know.
Come on, like weren't you? I mean, this kind of time frame, you were alive in the Ron Burgundy era.
Oh,
Well, but I also had a female co-host.
Okay.
More than half the time.
Okay. Yeah.
So I couldn't do that.
Yeah. No, that's fun. That's fun. Good.
there was something I was gonna say in regards to Heath here, and we've been sort of talking about transitioning, and to me, one of the big things is doing skills or extending one's skills into what's useful right now. So, for instance, you were doing broadcasting, and I'm not trying to sound negative when I say this, but did you think, you know what, I'm going to go it alone and I'm going to do podcasting? And has that even occurred to you? And again, I'm trying not to sound negative here, but like
how do you make money though?
Well,
we're not. Nobody's paying us 1 red cent.
No one's paying us, not yet. And I'm not. I'm,
Yeah,
Is he fishing for a sponsor right now? Is that what's happening?
Yeah,
something. What was it? The Toyota, drive it now.
Red Tag Days is on now.
No, well, it's, for instance, I have to use myself. I knew that making videos was gonna. I didn't know what the end goal was, or I didn't know what was going to happen. But I knew that if I started making videos, something was going to happen, because it had to, because no one else was doing it. And if I did them well, they had to get done now. And of course, for me, I was up from 10 o'clock till 2 o'clock for weeks, and I still do for years, doing that stuff.
That's only 4 hours. What's so big about? 2 a.m.
Yeah.
Oh.
So now my question is, and maybe I'll put a little seed of thought, as you call it a transition, but maybe, just maybe, is that something that you would think of doing?
All right. My career after 27 years wasn't going the way I wanted it to anyway. So let me just make these, self-disparaging remarks, and then we can proceed, because I thought I was going to be the next Ron McLean. I thought I was going to be the next Rod Black, or the next, I really wanted to do big things.
Don Cherry, you could have brought a suit.
In broadcasting.
Where's the suit?
Yeah,
You
no,
could've been Don Cherry.
you have to have credibility, and Don Cherry's got tons of credibility, and he'll tell you all about it if you just ask him.
Right.
So I didn't think my career was going in the right direction anyway, for what I was doing. I didn't get the chance to become a national name. And so from a local perspective, even then I was playing second fiddle at CTV behind a senior guy. Mm-hmm. And so I just didn't feel, from a credibility standpoint, that people would listen to what I had to say, or that I had enough credibility and people knew who I was to want to know what I thought, or you know what I'm saying? I
know what you're saying.
It had been mentioned to me before by Kevin Verova, and I just texted with him yesterday. He was a cameraman at CTV, and he said, you should do a podcast, and I'm like, well, what would I talk about? What people don't want to, like, what? And so I'm
going to give you some gold here.
All right.
And people will listen.
Oh?
Yep. You'd be surprised what people listen to. They'll listen to podcasts that are 2, 3, 4 hours long.
Okay, we can't have a 4 hour.
No. We're at 20.
I have stuff to do.
Yeah, we got 22 minutes. But and this comes down back to John in career. No, sorry, Jonathan. Sorry. Career transitions is that I'm a believer of trying to figure out what the next thing is, not what the now thing is.
That's a big part of what you've been talking about, Jonathan.
Right, yeah.
That's the windshield, not the rearview mirror.
Industry
Where is it going? Yeah.
And if I'm, it's a little bit different. Geoscientist who's a mid to late career geoscientist has a different challenge, because you really do have a very special skill set. It's actually extremely valuable.
Yeah.
And it's all around sort of getting ahead of that and saying, okay, where's the industry going to go? We're seeing massive shifts in all aspects, the acquisition, the processing, you talk about machine learning and cloud computing, and man, it's exciting. And it's that thing of, if you've been comfortable for a very long period of time and now you got to make a change, oh man. And it's sort of, what's the thing? You can be the snow or the snow plow, kind of thing. And I've always wanted to try to be the guy who's ahead and We don't always succeed, but at least we try.
But the nature of the business is changing. Even if you think about it, just in terms of the amount of data that is being acquired. I mean, it's exponentially different to what it was half a decade ago.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that in and of itself is a huge change. So you've got to be aware of the fact that be mindful of change, and you can feel that, like, you may well have a career trajectory, just like you were talking about, Heath. You may have a career trajectory, and you can see it from where you're standing today, and you're walking up that hill. And there may be situations where you found walking up that hill led you to a cliff, and off you go. Right? So you have to be mindful of what does change look like, and where are we going with it.
Yeah, it's interesting, these transformations that are
It's
all
exciting.
around us. Right?
It's thrilling.
And it wasn't my first layoff, guys. I've been laid off 3 times and fired once. So being out of work is not new to me. But after 27 years, I just thought, okay,
Bit of a shocker.
three strikes
Time
and
for
I'm out. Right?
something
Let's
new.
use a baseball analogy here, and my job is over. The
Yeah.
local sportscaster is done, unless you're at the local sports radio station or you happen to be one of Global's 3 sportscasters. City doesn't have any sportscasters. CBC doesn't have any sportscasters. CTV Calgary doesn't have any sportscasters. Only Global does, and the radio station, the Fan 960.
But you see,
So
to Chris's point, and this is the creativity.
time for something new.
We could have a local sports podcast, a local sports.
Yes.
Like, here's the update. Here's the weekly update, guys. This is what's happening in Little League. for
It's
example.
it's like commentary, because you're not at the forefront of the news. You're commenting on what is currently happening, and there is value in that.
Tom
And
Spolatini, the former UFC Dino and, of course, a partner in
Spolumbos,
Spolumbos. Everyone
right?
knows
Yeah,
Spolumbos,
right.
right?
Oh, delicious.
Everyone knows what a wild success story those 3 fellas have, and the impact they've had in our community, not just the sporting community. They're so gracious and generous with their donations to youth in general. And he bought a truck from me, as a matter of fact.
Oh, nicely done.
And Tom was lamenting the fact that there's no high school sports coverage anymore. He wants to know what's going on in the high schools. He wants to know what's going on in his old
There's
high
a
school.
podcast
He wants
opportunity
to.
right there.
He wants to know what's going on in the local sports.
You're
scene,
giving
and
away
he-
gold
and
right
he
now.
Can't get it anywhere.
Given away, actually, well, I shouldn't even say that. You could say this a million times, that there needs to be a high school podcast, and no one's going to do it.
And wouldn't it be great for the kids involved?
Yeah. That's a
Boom!
nice space
There you
to-
go.
Bang.
You've got your.
You're
you
all
got-
looking at me. You're all looking at me with
yes,
expectant
we are.
eyes.
Your invoice will be in the mail.
Yeah.
And God love Tom Spolatini. He asked me to host the Dinos 5th quarter banquet next Thursday at the Hotel Arts, and so
cool, for
that's
the,
yeah.
UFC Dinos.
Yeah, so
Oh.
it's nice. It's to be being my former self, where I still get to MC some jobs. He got me one next week. So
Well,
thanks, Tom.
and it occurs to me, just when you were talking about Spolatini and Spolumbos, and think about that. You're a professional athlete.
Mm-hmm.
You're a season, like, we talk about sudden things that you could see coming a little bit, and a professional athlete's like, my knee, I lost,
Yeah.
boom,
Yeah.
I'm done.
Yeah.
Now, and there are people who work on this. That first day where you're not going to practice, and you're not going to enjoy the adulation of the fans, and what am I going to do? That's got to be disconcerting. And not everybody does, in terms of professional athletes even, do very well. Some of them go to sportscasting, others go. I think Jim Poplinski has he followed in your
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
He was
he's
way
my
ahead of you, but
predecessor,
he's
yeah.
your predecessor, but leasing, right? So
Yeah.
those
So
are
sports to sausages, amazing, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
but
So you-
and very successful.
So
I heard
you-
a story-
You go from being a seasoned professional to a professional seasoner, maybe.
Oh.
Very nice, Jonathan.
Were you waiting to use that one?
I waited like 3 minutes for that, for crying out loud.
That was good. No, that's great. What's our time?
We're at 27 minutes.
I thought we were going to talk about baseball.
Oh, well, that's
man.
the next goes. Oh, and speaking of gas embargoes,
What?
oh, I put in these talking points.
Chris always wants to have structure. It's like
It's
let's just
a
freeform this.
little bit of structure.
You need a little bit of structure.
This would go right
Baseball, quickly to touch
Oh.
on baseball, because it is near and dear to my heart. I still volunteer. I'm still the president of one of the local associations here that it has a little league, and
God
and
bless you,
It's
Al.
exciting, and it's growing. The problem we've had this year is the bloody snow.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
So I was getting peppered with emails last week like, when are the fields going to open? And I said, when the snow melts.
When the city starts to prepare them.
Yeah. And so we're really excited because this will be the first full season for our Stanley Park facility, which we opened up last fall.
Wonderful.
And which it was just entirely through private donations. And it's an amazing facility. For those of you that are listening
blessing to
and
the city.
in Calgary, go see that field. Go
blessing
see a
to the
game.
city.
They're going to start probably not this week. There's still lots of snow around, but maybe towards the end of next week, maybe the beginning of May. Ready for baseball season.
And your numbers being up is bearing fruit in our league as well. Then Babe Ruth Calgary, we expanded for the second year in a row.
Oh, fabulous.
Yeah, so we added the
just
Pirates
getting
last year, we added the Expos this year, and so we've seen an explosion in players trying out. So
Youth baseball
is where it's at in the spring and summer in this city at Optimist and Glenmore Parks, and in Rocky Mountain Little League Diamonds like Stanley Park in the south.
Yeah, very exciting, and can hardly wait to see the kids out on the diamonds. I know they've all been inside getting ready and warming up and doing that stuff. So.
Yes, they are ready.
Speaking of this, gas embargoes.
That's a terrible segue. That doesn't work at all.
But it's on my sheet of paper here.
Oh.
Speaking of pitching a fastball, what about Rachel Notley? I give up.
This is the oil and gas segment of the podcast. So,
any thoughts, guys? Have you been following this thing, Bill 12, and the ability of the ministers and the government of Alberta to not ship product and control that? Jonathan's shaking his head. What are
It's
your
an
thoughts?
outrage.
Yeah, I mean, for God, if I feel like if I had hair, it would be set on fire. Be a short fire.
Alan, I have enough for both of you.
Oh yeah, I have no hair either. Oh.
Yeah, our average is good though. Our average is good. Yeah, I understand the desire for the government to take action and somehow strike back at the heart of the British Columbian government that's trying to decide the fate of our province and actually of the nation in a way. And I find it extremely presumptuous when the premier jumps back into his SUV and drives off. It's just hypocrisy of the first order.
Yeah.
They are. Their primary export, one of their main exports is coal, albeit for metallurgy, but still, you're shipping coal. You have no problem with
It's
shipping
still
coal.
an extremely dirty form of energy.
And the one that blew me away is Vancouver Airport building a pipeline to import jet fuel. What are we talking about here?
Import from Washington, where Mr.
From Asia.
From Asia.
Potentially from Asia. Yeah. It's
unbelievable.
It's completely bonkers what's happening in this country. We're doing it in the East. We're importing 700,000 barrels a day. I worry, and I have one of my very good friends who texted me because he knows that I'm sort of following some of this stuff. He texted me and said, I've been reading through Bill 12, and I thought, oh my goodness, I thought you were busy. But anyway, he was apparently reading through it, and he's quite concerned about the power that it hands the provincial government to make arbitrary decisions about the sale of energy. And so this is a slippery slope. And I'm not sure that it actually accomplishes what we want.
Right.
We want it to accomplish.
It sounds good on a reactionary basis, but give it to them.
But there could be unintended consequences. Right?
Well, and handing governments huge amounts of discretionary power is something I'm just automatically against. History's full of examples of things that might have looked good in the beginning that ended up very poorly. When governments sought and were granted these additional powers, and I think that ought to be done with great caution and great oversight, and for a limited time only, if at all. I really worry about this, and I don't know what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I mean, I really feel we're being held to ransom by the deal that the Premier of BC did with the Green Party. 3 seats that keeps his party cobbled together and in power. So essentially, are we talking about the strength of Confederacy because of 3 seats in 3 seats?
We are
3 seats in BC.
And
it's insane.
I think a prime minister who's really not prepared to lose the votes in the East.
You mean Mr. Dress Up?
Yeah, he's a very good dancer. It's complex, but it's really messing us up. And I just spent 3 days in Houston in part because I needed a baseball fix. But they are rocking and rolling right now in Houston. They are rocking and rolling.
Yeah.
And it's really in part because of their own ingenuity and their own, sort of those values of freedom
And geography.
free market.
Yeah,
Geography helps, but it's also at our expense. I will tell you this.
only in Canada do we eat our own and poo-poo what we do well. Whether it's hockey. Remember that big hockey summit they had after we didn't win a gold medal at the World Juniors or the Olympics or some silly thing like 20 years ago, and we had this big hockey summit. Oh, what are we doing wrong? And like now this we do something really well. We're a world leader in it, and our citizens seem to have more power than our politicians to implement something.
A minority of citizens.
A loud minority is getting all this run, and the flow stops. The pipeline stops. The exports stop. And we start importing stuff that we make. I mean, it's
bonkers.
It defies belief.
Only
really
in
does
Canada.
defy
Only in
belief.
Canada.
But let's at least import it from nasty dictators.
Yes.
If we're going to do it,
That
let's
makes
do it.
perfect sense.
Let's bring it in from Venezuela
Yes.
because
Yeah.
he's not very nice.
Sure. I mean, a healthy energy industry will it'll fund R&D, and it'll fund a broader base change to a much broader select portfolio of energy sources. That's that's the benefit of having a healthy energy industry. Look at Statoil, for instance, who have changed their name to Equinor, I think, because it better reflects the broader portfolio of energy that they have now. And just saying no more oil, okay.
Well, paddling in your kayak that's made of oil.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's no solution, right? There's no solution that's talked about. It's just no. Okay, well, how do you negotiate with that?
Yeah,
You take away people's bananas and their cell phones, and then they wake up and go, "Where's my bananas? Where are my cell phones?" You go, "You can't have a banana. You can't have a cell phone because there's no way of shipping that banana or that cell phone to you."
But I want a banana and a cell phone.
Wait, we're taking our bananas away?
The Venezuelans have gone too far. They're withholding bananas.
Tell you what, we'll buy your bananas, but not your oil. That's the deal.
Yeah.
They might have an issue with that. How does this translate to something that's now up front and center for you? You must be selling more electric cars. You must be selling more.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Do you see a different mix in what people, you're still selling trucks, presumably.
Yeah, we sell a very thirsty 5.7 liter Tundra that uses a lot of fuel, a 144 liter tank.
You're probably not supposed to say that.
No. We don't deny it. I mean, it's well known. It's a big truck.
It's like my Ford.
So, but largely Toyota vehicles are improving their horsepower and getting better fuel efficiency. And we think that we know that we're the leader in the hybrid technology.
Right. The Prius is full.
Yes. We have a full Prius line. The Camrys come in a hybrid. The RAV4 comes in a hybrid. The Highlanders come in a hybrid.
But not trucks yet? I'm surprised.
Well, maybe that's
next.
Maybe that's what's next. If I don't know if it would sell in this province. Maybe in the east or in BC.
Well, I think the reason you buy an
knows?
electrical vehicle, the reason you buy electric vehicles is because of the performance. There's nothing wrong with it. All of us that are in this industry understand you got to make the electricity.
Yeah.
So if you make the electricity with natural gas, you power up your vehicle and you drive. Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that an electric vehicle takes more energy to make in the first place.
Yeah, and Toyotas don't have plug-in models that we have a Prius Prime that's making its way west, but largely it's just a hybrid, and they run on the batteries. And that's different from a plug-in electric car because the batteries charge in the system by braking.
Do you see do you see that, let's say, the millennial age group are more prone to buy the hybrid?
We're seeing some of that.
Do you see a demographic, or is it any and all? Is it spread? How does it shake out in your kind of...
Yeah, a woman came in yesterday driving a Volkswagen Jetta. It was diesel. And she wanted to test drive a Camry hybrid because she is on the highway a lot. She cares about fuel efficiency, and she was they lived out in Strathmore on the farm. So you get all types. And she was retired and plays golf lots. And we have lots of 20-somethings that come in looking for the Prius and looking for the little Yaris, the little car, the 1.5 liter engine. That's not going to cost them anything on gas.
I don't want that vehicle.
You're more of a Tundra guy. You strike me as a Tundra guy, Al. We are seeing some of that, and that does bear fruit. And we're seeing the Prius Prime come this year, and that's the first plug-in car that can go longer distances and higher speeds than our regular hybrid cars. So it's happening. It's slowly happening. But again, you got to produce the electricity, and that's
right.
People forget.
It's
right.
You mean
Just
it isn't unicorn farts that it comes from?
No.
What?
By the way,
We've
Chris-
investigated that, and it's untrue.
Untrue.
We always talk about every time he says unicorn farts, which is every podcast.
Wicked.
I think that it's like the Super Trooper thing of meow. You know, like how many times can you say meow? Do you
Yeah,
ever
what are you
watch
doing,
Super
meow?
Trooper? What are you doing, meow?
Don't you mean meounties?
And I see the new Super Trooper. We're talking about movies.
Oh yeah. Good transition.
Yeah, wasn't
nice.
it? Well done.
Hey, boom, 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 boom. Super Troopers coming out tomorrow, and I'm kind of thinking, hilarious. I'd love to go see that movie.
I've seen advertisements on YouTube, and I'm going to have to say I've never seen the first. Well, I think I did see the first one. That was a very long time ago in a different point in my life.
Well, it's
Yeah.
You weren't. You're not as crass now.
Yes,
Is that what you're
maybe.
saying?
I think that's would have been the thing.
put it this way. There's no mystery as to why they're releasing it on 4/20, right?
Right.
The
yes.
first one is all it's
Yeah.
and it is funny. I get a real kick out of that movie. The other one that I've seen, which I can recommend because I usually try to recommend at least one movie, is A Quiet Place. You guys seen that thing?
Quiet.
I have not. No.
Okay, prepare to have your pants completely scared right off of your body.
It's a
like you
horror
could actually
or-
do one of those sit-down newscasts you were talking about with no pants.
Yeah.
You could do that.
Is
after
it a
watching.
horror or is it a thriller? Is it a
Yeah.
shocker? Is it a?
It's a brilliant film. John Krasinski, who's the guy you might remember him from The Office. He's sort of that the more rational guy in The Office, the television series The Office.
American or British?
And I think he's married to Emily
Blunt.
Is he? Yeah, Emily
Yeah,
Blunt.
that's right.
And they're both in the movie. He was part of I think he found the screenplay and then added to it, directed it, and I think might have produced it and acted in it. Okay, so this is his baby. It's without spoiling it, they're in a scenario where they can't make a sound or really bad things happen.
Oh yes, I've seen the promos for that.
You cannot make a sound, and it's a matter of survival. And when sound is made, it's not a good outcome. And so the movie is quiet. The movie, like we're in this theater, it's packed. I'm in there. My wife talked me into going. I was like, "You hate horror movies?" She was, "No, I like John Krasinski. It's going to be really good." We found ourselves petrified.
Oh wow.
And
Don't make a sound.
And then it was so quiet. The theater is quiet. Like, and then there's some guy 4 rows back chomping on some popcorn. I was like,
We're gonna die.
honestly, it was like good thing that we
Wow.
have gun control in Canada because I was like, oh my God, stop it.
Wow.
It was so, but I really, really recommend going and having that communal experience in the theater in this quiet movie. And it's just, oh my God.
Emily Blunt is great too. She's great in everything.
She was so intense, and it is a great watch. So I try to give one a week. That's the one we saw this week, and man, not disappointing.
I love how you say actually going to a cinema, going to the movies, a communal experience. It's a different experience than, let's say, watching a movie at home. And I would be the first one to say that I binge watch, Netflix series and goodness knows what. But going to actually physically getting out and going to the movies, and in some theaters where they have the reclining, comfy, easy chairs and you can absolutely just like you're in your living room. Fantastic. It's a different way to see the movies. I think Empire 16 in Coventry Hills has two
I've
recliners.
heard about that. I've never been there.
Two leather recliner chairs next to each other. They're in twos, so you go there with your bride or significant other, and it's a great experience.
What happens if you end up with somebody you don't know?
They sell them to you in twos. At least I think so.
Or it could be like a random selection.
Oh,
blind
it's
dating.
a blind date.
I wonder who I'm going to get. Oh.
That's funny.
Thank God it's dark.
I gotta go, Al.
You got to run.
Yeah,
I gotta go.
Let's wrap it up.
Shave and a haircut.
Let's
Shaving a
wrap it up.
haircut. All
Let's
right.
wrap it up.
We need the music.
Here it comes. Maybe.
We'd like to thank Jonathan Banyard and Heath Brown for being here today.
Our pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Hey,
much.
lots of fun,
Great
guys.
fun
This
to be
might
here.
be our best one ever. I think.
We shall see. It's at 44 minutes right now.
Oh, no.
Yeah, pretty long. Once again, this is the Source Points podcast. I'm Dr. Chris.
And I'm Alan Chatney.
And till next time, keep rocking.